Luke, and welcome to another episode of the Vision to Victory podcast, where we discuss practical ways to turn your dreams into reality. We've spent several weeks discussing the topic of finding freedom in different areas of our lives. Last week, we took a break, and this week, I want to return and conclude that discussion on freedom with what I believe is the most important freedom we can experience, the freedom to love. I'm going to start with this quote from philosopher and scholar Ernest Holmes. Love is within us. It cannot be destroyed. It can be ignored. To the extent that we abandon love, we will feel it has abandoned us. Denying love is our only problem, and embracing it is the only answer. Through the power of love, we can let go of past history and begin again. Love heals, forgives, and makes whole. There's a lot that I really like about that, but I particularly like defining love as an experience. That I believe that's a good word for, it's an inclusive word for much of what love is. You know, love is an experience. It's something we feel. It's something we do. It's an energy that, again, as we mentioned, flows to us, from us, through us. There's so much there. And again, while it would be impossible, I think, to define love in its entirety, I do think that unpacking it can help us understand it. And again, we all know and have experienced love on some level. But why love? Like, why does it matter? Why is it such a focus of so much of our lives, culture, everything? And again, this is not comprehensive, but I think we can take a stab at some of the big ones, right? So love gives meaning. Love gives strength. Love gives purpose. Love gives hope. Love gives life and vitality. Love heals, protects. Love takes action. Or in the words of Bob Goff, love does. So all these things, and I could unpack each of these in their own right, gives meaning. I've talked about this before, many of the things that we experience in life lack substance if you don't have somebody to share it with. We've talked about maybe you experience a high in life, a joy, a job promotion, or, a marriage or a new baby or whatever it is. Life, or love rather, gives meaning to those parts of life. And without it, things can feel empty. Those things, maybe job promotion, it doesn't feel special if you don't have someone to share it with. So again, we could unpack all of those, but there's so much weight and substance that we derive simply by being connected with those that we love. So what keeps us from loving? I'll list a few. Number one, fear. Fear of hurt, fear of pain, fear of rejection, past hurt or past trauma, selfishness, pride, low self-esteem, unforgiveness, busyness. These are many of the things that keep us from loving and experiencing love in our lives. So if we don't want to bar ourselves from love, what is required of us? What do we need to do or focus on if we don't want fear, past trauma, or selfishness, our own pride, or maybe just low self-esteem, feeling bad about ourselves, unforgiveness, busyness? And we don't want any of that to keep us from experiencing love in our lives. What is required of us to open the door to love in our lives? Vulnerability. Number one, vulnerability. In close relationships, I believe this is absolutely 100% a requirement for connection and subsequently a loving relationship. And, as someone who, for much of my life, has struggled with being vulnerable, struggled with being open about, my own deficiencies or weaknesses or whatever it is, vulnerability is a must for love. Here's the good news. I've found that vulnerability not only is a requirement for connection, it fosters connection. So if you want to connect with somebody, and you don't do this with just anybody, but people that you're in close connection with who you trust, be vulnerable about what you're struggling with. I promise it will foster connection, and that opens the door for love. Love also requires an acceptance of risk. Love is risky, and it's true that you can be hurt by love. Not by love itself, but if you love someone, then that vulnerability opens up the door also for them to hurt you. Of course, we all know this, and unfortunately, I've probably experienced it on some level. But risk reward, right? Love requires risk. Love also requires, as I mentioned earlier, action. To simply say you love someone and do nothing that actually reflects that really doesn't mean anything. Words are cheap, right? So love requires action. Love also requires perseverance and commitment. Anybody who's been in a long-term relationship knows those last two, right? Because it's not always easy. Life isn't always easy. Love is not always easy. And it doesn't always feel good in the moment to love somebody who maybe has hurt you or, is messy. But love does require perseverance, and it does require commitment. I had a fun personal story that I want to share with you and use this as an illustration. So a couple days ago, there was an injured hawk in our backyard. And hawks are big, bigger than you might think if you haven't seen one up close. And it had been walking with its broken wing between our yard and a couple of other yards, some of our neighbors' yards as well. And some of the neighbors noticed it and had called animal control, whose suggestion was to let nature run its course. Nobody else knew what to do, and although they probably wanted to help, weren't willing to take any action. So I went online to find places that could potentially take in our injured friend in the backyard. I found a great option, but they don't come and get the bird. You have to take it to them. So, I've got this big hawk in my backyard. He's got a broken wing. He's clearly can't fly. But he's big. He's got big talons and, a big beak. And I'm assuming he probably isn't going to love the idea of someone trying to pick him up. But I'm thinking through how I can do this, how I can get this very large bird of prey to this place. And my wife was working at the time, but I was texting with her and told her that I was planning to kind of corral this bird and take him in. She texted me back saying that, quote, she'd be so impressed. So of course now I have to do it, right? Boys always like to impress the girls that they like. So I did what anyone does when they need to learn something. I went to YouTube and watched some videos on how to pick up an injured hawk. I then went and, admittedly, with less drama than I was anticipating, picked up the bird and was able to get him in a pet carrier and take him to the wildlife facility. I learned or was reminded of a few things from this experience. Outside of just how to pick up a wounded bird, I was reminded again of what we were just talking about. Love takes action. It would mean nothing for me to say, I wish or hope the best for the bird. I hope he does all right when I can see him walking around helpless in my backyard, he's going to die if I don't do anything. So it does nothing for me to say something, to give some sort of platitude. If I genuinely care, then I need to do something. Love takes action. Another thing I learned is that fear should not be a part of the equation. When you're assessing the risk when it comes to doing something kind or loving, fear shouldn't get a say. Again, maybe I really want to do something loving for this bird, but what if I get scratched? And while that might be a reality, and frankly, I expected that to happen, if I care enough, then it shouldn't really matter. And we could probably better illustrate this with like a really irrational fear. And this is a good way to show how fear can cloud our judgment. And maybe you have a really irrational fear. I know someone that is terrified of mice. Now look, no shame on you if you're afraid of mice, but let's be realistic. What is a mouse going to do to you that would warrant yelling, screaming, jumping around? The mouse is just trying to run away. There's no real risk to you because of a little mouse running around, right? Of course. So if you factor in your fear to the assessment of the situation, your perspective will be very, very skewed and will not give you an accurate take on, the reality of the situation. So this does apply to love. So I'm going to bring this around here. But the third thing that I learned from this situation with this bird is that sometimes the best qualification to help is simply being available and willing. That's it. My wife is a very kind and caring person. She likes to do nice things for people, especially those who are down and out, someone struggling with something. And, this happens often. Maybe a friend is going through something difficult, but she'll say, I'm unqualified. And what she means is, whatever area that person might be struggling with, the voice in her head is saying, I struggle with that same thing. I don't have it all together in that area. I'm not qualified to give advice on that. I'm not qualified. And I'll tell her the same thing that I'll tell you that I would tell myself. Sometimes best qualification is just to be available and willing. That's it. None of us have it all together, right? So you might as well just be okay with that and be available and willing. Now, talking about love, maybe you're thinking, I want more love in my life, but I don't know where to start. I would say the answer is simple. Start by giving it. Finding ways to give love, whether that's being more intentional in your relationships or finding a place to volunteer your time. Just being intentional about giving love will open the doors for more love to flood into your life. In the early stages of a romantic relationship, the one who says, I love you first is the one who takes on the risk of rejection. Rejection and hurt. You could picture this, right? Maybe two people have been dating for a while, emotions are getting heightened, and someone says, I love you for the first time. It feels very vulnerable because that person could say, I'm not there. I don't feel the same way. And there's that rejection. The person who says it first is the one who takes the risk. I don't think I could do the topic of love justice without talking about Jesus, who took the ultimate I love you first risk. Paid for us with his life while we were sinners, while we were messy, knowing full well that we can and would reject him. He endured pain and shame so that we could have life and experience love. He embodied the well-known words from the Apostle Paul. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. While we all fall short of that standard of love, it does give us a good goal to strive for. And I hope you'll make that choice today. I hope you choose to love well today. Choose love. I hope this was helpful for somebody. If it was, please like it, share it. Talk to you next week.